As you play the game over time, you are going to start to get quite a few free heroes. But the question is, how good are they? What do they do? And realistically, how do they stack up against each other? Which is exactly why I will be doing a tier list on every single free permanent login champion in Raid Shadow Legends. Now, some of these can be from 30 days in, and some of them can be from over 2 years in. So I am going to be ranking them. There are going to be a few things of criteria. Number one is I will have more value assigned to heroes that come earlier. So High Katoon, while they are replaceable, is going to be rated a lot more leniently compared to the units that are close to 2 years. Now, aside from that, this is going to be a broad ranking. I know you can't really do that too well in Raid, but this is at the end of the day more fun. And also, if you guys do not agree with any of my rankings, please let me know in the comments what you would change. I am always down to hear others' opinions and learn a little bit myself. If you want to get some of my favorite champions in Raid for free, click my link in the description right now to get a free Karato Fox Hunter, as well as 3 amazing epic champions as you level up. Now here's what to do to get them. Number 1, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall the game. Next, click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Next, you're going to launch the game and complete the tutorial. Afterwards, you should just be able to go to your inbox and claim your first legendary champion. Next, for the epics, you're going to get them as you level up. Now, there's a chance to get a free Karato Fox Hunter as a starter champion, as well as Fayne, Uugo, and Vergis as you progress through the game. These are some very, very strong heroes, and you can get it all by clicking my link right now. With that out of the way, let's go into the first login champion that you get, which is going to be High Katoon. Now, High Katoon, honestly, frankly, sets a very high bar. High Katoon, if you ranked it in a vacuum just as a hero versus every other hero in all of Raid, she's going to be a lot lower. But High Katoon is the first one that you're going to get. High Katoon is a month it. And High Katoon brings something which, unless you are very lucky with your pulls, you are going to need. It is going to be a necessity. High Katoon is going to be your de facto best, obviously, unless you pull someone, which is not a guarantee. She's going to be your de facto best speed unit early on. A1, decreased speed. A2, insane ability, 15% turn meter to all allies, puts increased speed, big version on all allies for turns on a 3-turn cooldown. And then the A3, even more turn meter, has a chance to decrease the turn meter of enemies on an AoE. This is a 4-turn cooldown, but it is still an amazing ability. It is mostly for the A3, but on top of all of this, you get a speed aura. Early game, you're going to need speed. Speed in Raid is the most important. If you go before your opponent, you could even go twice before they are able to go once. It is the most important stat. High Katoon brings turn meter in debuffs, buffs, increases your turn meter, and lowers opponent's turn meter, while also bringing a very solid speed aura. High Katoon is S on this list. I don't think it's very debatable. She is incredibly good. When you get her, you're going to want to use her unless you pull other units. And if you do not pull anyone else, it's going to take all the way until you get Arbiter to realistically replace her. Now, immediately onto the other end of the spectrum, we get Yaga the Insatiable. I think Yaga is garbage. I would never recommend anyone level Yaga realistically. And let me explain why. Now, the reason why Yaga the Insatiable is so absolute turbo garbage is because of a few things. A1 has a chance of placing poison. A2 has a chance of placing poison. Cool. A3, damage increases against targets under poison. Is it good? No. It does like no damage, especially for the fact that you could literally start your first champion in the game can literally be a better poisoner than Yaga the Insatiable. The A1 is so inconsistent. Yaga just is a bad unit. This A2, which might have potentially been its only redeeming factor if it was on a 3-turn cooldown, is on a 4-turn cooldown, 75% chance. So he's not even guaranteed to put out the 2 poisons, which is ridiculous. And once again, it's on a 4-turn cooldown. There's no use for him. He's garbage. Like, look, he also wants to read a ton. Both of its abilities 4-turn cooldowns. They're barely even good abilities. And Kale, a starter champion, is better because he actually is consistent and puts out more poisons on his A3, which is a 4 cooldown, but it doesn't matter because it puts out 4 versus this guy that hits like a noodle. Absolutely deserving a B. Do not level him. Now, Dark Aethel, I want to put in D, but I am going to put in C purely for the fact that she's early on. Now, Yaga cannot get any justification for maybe being above the lowest tier on the tier list, but Dark Aethel, you know, she is pretty early, so I can give her some props. A1, big version of decreased defense. This is actually consistent, 50% attacks twice. Decent A1, similar to Aethel herself. A2 attacks all enemies, has a chance to play speed, 4-turn cooldown, which is a downside, and it's not even guaranteed to land. Very common with both of these heroes. And the A3 attacks all enemies, increase speed on this champion for 3 turns if it kills 4 or more enemies, heals if it attacks and kills 6 or more enemies, extra turn if the attack kills 10 or more enemies. She's very clearly designed for Spider. I will say Spider is very hard early, although I don't really like Spider viability without stuff HP burn. The thing about Dark Aethel that makes her kind of bad is not that her cooldowns are long, it's not that she's not 100 consistent. These are all big problems with champions, and especially with power creep nowadays. You know, these champions came out on the game's release, so they have been power crept to hell. The thing about Dark Aethel is she hits really weak. She does not hit very hard, but like I said, she gets a few bonus points for being early, but even then, unless you have a specific use where you have no other options, I would never level her at all. C and D are like, don't even touch. Dark Elhain is going to go in A tier, purely because while she is niche compared to a lot of these login champions, especially when you get to like 2 years in, you'll probably just pull a champion before anyways. Dark Elhain actually has a niche where she functionally is immune to freeze. Instantly removes any freeze debuffs on this champion, replaces them with increased crit rate, increased crit damage, strengthen whenever an enemy places a freeze buff on this champion. Now, this is basically all she's there for. She does have 2 passives, pretty sick. Before they started combining passive, it fills this champion's turn meter by 25%, instantly activates the Death Majesty skill whenever this champion or an ally receives a freeze debuff. So not only is she getting to her skills faster, she's immediately doing her A2. And this A2 is actually pretty decent. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. It's also inconsistent, 75%, but that's okay. Increase attack on this champion, and then the A1 destroys target's max HP. She's surprisingly good, honestly. Now, would I recommend leveling her? Depends on your account, obviously, but she is decent. Now we get to Lordly Legionary, and he is going to be put in B tier. He is acceptable, which for this ranking is a good thing. He is the 150-day reward. A1 attacks an enemy twice. Extra hit if the target is under a heal reduction. So 3 hits, 4 hits if the target is under a 100% heal reduction. Really decent for Fire Knight. It's not the best, but it's solid. A2 attacks an enemy, has a 100%, first 100% debuff, which is crazy out of all of these login champions. On a 3-turn cooldown, it is single target, but that's okay. Puts a decreased speed debuff for 2 turns, decreases the target's turn meter by 20% if the decreased speed debuff. Now places a reflect damage buff and continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, 4-turn cooldown on the 3. This ability's fine. Now he is absolutely a Fire Knight specialist. Personally, I just don't think that you'll need him, but if you do need him, he is going to be useful. I just think that other unit on higher rankings are going to get a little bit more use. Moving on, let's go to Syl of the Drakes. Syl of the Drakes is like the poster child for the best login reward. I don't know if recent buffs has made anyone better. Back in the day, Syl was like one of the better legendaries out there. A1, attack an enemy, chance to decrease speed, and has a chance of decreasing turn meter. That is just the A1. A2 attacks all enemies twice on a 3-turn cooldown, and each hit has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. 2 different times, it's more likely than you think on an AoE. This is a very good ability. A3 revives an ally with 50% HP, 55 ally protection, 50% ally protection, and this is on a 4-turn cooldown. She's really good. But the real thing that makes her really good is the passive. Heals all allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. Also places a 30% increased speed buff on a random ally for now, has she been power crept? Yes, but she brings a lot of things, mostly control and support. And in raid, there are a lot of different alternatives for DPS. Support is really important. So if you just don't have the support because you got very unlucky with pulls, Syl is going to bring you control in the A1, control in the A2. Especially for stuff like Doom Tower. This is going to be amazing. Also Revive, which is really good. And then a really good healing and buffing passive. Now, she's going to be amazing in Barbarian faction trials. She's going to be really good for general progression. And she is the first legendary you are going to get. She is very, very strong. Moving on to, I think, Tanix Hate Flower. I'm just going to put her D. I don't really see any use for her, to put it simple. A1, attacks twice, heals all allies by almost none of the HP, which each hit on targets, and it relies on them being under decreased speed to even heal for 3% a hit. That's like nothing. Next, A2 has a chance of placing decreased speed. It's not the best because it is single target, but it does have a chance of placing a decreased speed on all enemies if it's critical, which is actually quite good. So just build her with crit rate, and she's actually decent on the A2. Decreases the damage all allies receive by 5%. Champion will receive that damage instead. She's an okay support. You might find some use in action trials. I just think simply she's mostly a faction wars unit. Now you could justify her being in C tier. I might actually put her in C tier just because of her faction trial potential, but realistically she's not. Rush the Mangler. Rush is actually one of my favorite login units. He is surprisingly quite good because of a few things. A1, Leech. It's actually quite likely 75% chance when booked. That's a really good chance. Leech, whenever an ally attacks someone with Leech on, they're going to heal a little bit of their damage dealt. A2 attacks all enemies, has a chance of lowering attack and decreasing crit damage, which is on a 4-turn cooldown, but it is AoE and it is guaranteed, which for these login champions is really hard to find. Now on the A3, he does attack all enemies, places continuous heal on all allies, and an additional continuous heal if at least one enemy is hit with. This is on a 4-turn cooldown. He does have slightly long cooldowns, but he just does so much. He lowers the amount of damage on your unit, he heals them, and then he puts Leech, which in turn heals them as well. Rush to me is a high A tier. You could justify an S for these login champions, but I just think Rush deserves the high A tier. Moving on to Vergis. Vergis used to be garbage. She used to be more used as fodder to empower your Lydia, which is the faction trial clear reward. Now she is a decent amount better. A1, hit an enemy twice, has a 100% when booked, chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. Build this champion's turn meter equals the amount the target loses. This is freaking 30% on the A1, on a free unit. This is really good, right? That's just an A1. A2 attacks all enemies, has a chance, 100%, of placing a decreased speed on everyone on a 3-turn cooldown, and then also puts an ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. So she's bringing the control, which, like I said before, turn meter manip is super important, and she's also ally protect. Now the A3, this is where she is incredibly useful for one very important area of the game. A3 attacks all enemies, places a provoke debuff for 1 turn, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 20% of their max HP for 2 turns. Now this is very good for Hydra. There's a certain Hydra head where you need to provoke it, right? A lot of times in Hydra, you need provoke. And having a provoke on a 3-turn that lasts for a okay amount of uptime is really hard to get. So Vergis brings that and brings the decreased speed AoE guaranteed and has turn meter manipulation on the A1. For a unit you are guaranteed to get just by logging on, she is S tier. Now is the time where we are going to get into the units that have kind of been added after release, extended for people who have been playing a longer amount of time. Cleopteryx is another unit that really got buffed recently. A1, attack an enemy, chance of placing weaken, chance increases to 50% from 30%, 20% more when booked if the target is under a Hex debuff. I hate Hex. I think Hex is a terrible mechanic in this game, but it works with her kit. This is a perfect Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy under a Hex debuff. Very rare, but it can happen. A2, 3-turn cooldown, places crit rate increase, crit damage increase on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a block active skills for 2 turns on targets under Hex, which is actually a very solid ability. It hits decent. A3 places increased accuracy on this champion, attacks all enemies, chance of placing Hex, combos with the rest of the kit, chance of placing Fear debuff for 1 turn instead on enemies under 4-turn cooldown. Passive counterattacks with the default skill every time this champion loses 30% or HP, 30% HP or more in a single turn. Always counterattacks when attacked 2 or more allies are dead. This thing is pretty solid. I mean, it's incredibly often. Now, where would I place her on the tier? Personally, I think with her buff, she actually goes to A tier, personally. Now, this is one that, might not have a lot of people agreeing with, but she does do something very specific. And if you are lacking certain pulls, they actually be pretty good. Next, let's actually talk about Skyon. I didn't even know this guy existed. I'm gonna be real. I didn't know that this guy was even fusion. Now, Scion, I'm gonna be real, I'm thinking D tier. Scion is just a unit that you can get after a year of playing, almost 400 days. The problem with Skyon, in my opinion, isn't that he's terrible. My issue is he comes 400 days in. So I just can't rate him very high. A1 has a very small chance of placing block active skills. You cannot rely on this. A2, attack a single enemy. Places block buffs, heal reduction. Will ignore any shield buffs. This is okay. 3-turn cooldown. Why not? A3 removes all debuffs from this champion, attacks all enemies, increase attack, and increase crit damage buff on this champion for 1 turn attack. Most passive enemies under block active skills, block buffs, heal reduction, cannot decrease this champion's turn meter. This is okay. There are a couple things. What job is he really supposed to do at 400 days in? For 400 days in, you're gonna have people that do these debuffs, and he really does read like they tried to make him a Fire Knight champion, but he only does single target hit, so there's not really a lot of use for him. Now, it is possible that you might say he deserves higher. Personally, that's all I can give. Next, we get to Gerda Bogbrew. Gerda is honestly not that good. For a legendary, she's probably the worst legendary out of the entire batch of the logins. A1, chance of applying debuff spread, taking a random debuff from the target, placing it everyone under weekend. It is kind of conditional, decreases the target's turn meter by 10% if they're not under any debuffs. That's okay. A2 attacks all enemies, has a chance of placing weaken. AoE weaken is pretty nice on 100% guarantee and 3-turn cooldown. After attacking, has an 80% chance of placing 2 poison debuffs on all enemies without weaken. These poison debuffs cannot be blocked or resisted. A3, chance of removing a random buff, then has a chance of placing poison, also removes 2 random debuffs from all allies. This is actually a really solid ability. Passive, whenever an enemy receives a debuff, their turn meter is decreased by 3%. Now, is Gerda terrible? No. The only issue is you get her after 400 days and she's kind of mid. Honestly, are you really gonna need an AoE weaken 400 days in and not have anyone to use, to the point where you have to skill up a freaking Gerda for some poisons and some weaken? There are epics that do her job. There are epics that do her job better. You're probably going to have an alternative, but if you don't, she can be in beat. She just takes simply too long to get. Moving on to Lady Arish. Lady Arish, once again, suffers by the same exact issue as a login champion as a lot of these later ones. If you pull her earlier, she might be good, but we're not ranking her on that. We're ranking this on the assumption that you are getting these heroes on the login. A1 has a 25% chance of placing 25% weaken for 2 turns. Sure, she attacks twice. This is abysmal. It's garbage. A2, attacks all enemies, has a chance of granting an extra turn. If it's not granted, fills his champion's turn meter by 10% for each living enemy instead. This is a 4-turn cooldown. It's a freaking 20% to do really much of anything. A3 places increased attack, increased crit damage, then extra turn. This is cool and all, not terrible. Passive places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns whenever their HP drops below 50%. That's not terrible either, right? Once again, this is a unit that you realistically should not need by the time you get her. Her multipliers are really not that good, especially because her only purpose is DPS. Personally, I'm going to put her in C tier. I would prefer her over Scion because I think Scion's terrible. But the thing is, once again, takes too long to get. Next, we have Eryx, and Eryx is actually a champion that got buffed recently and is surprisingly quite good. First of all, HP-based nuker, which is always something that I really enjoy using. I love HP and defense-based nukers. They're just a lot more versatile than attack-based ones. A1, tackle enemies has a 25% chance of removing one random buff from each target. It goes up to 35%. A2 attacks all enemies, 3-turn cooldown, 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, transfers a random debuff from this champion to the targets that receive the stun. This is a great ability, and it kind of hit decent. Now, A3 places the ally protection buff on allies except this champion for 2 turns, also counter attack buff on this champion. So then he's going back to his A1, smacking, removing a random buff from each target pretty damn often. It's really good. And this is on a 3-turn cooldown. Passive fills this champion's turn meter each time an ally inflicts a critical hit. That is amazing. Heals this champion by 5% of the max HP each time an enemy inflicts a critical. So he's getting back to his ability. His abilities have a 3-turn cooldown. That's amazing. He's protecting the team. He's controlling really well. He's doing some very solid damage. Eryx is honestly one of the best login champions now. You do need to log in for close to 2 years to get him, but I would say that he is still pretty damn solid. Definitely deserves to be in S tier. Now, final unit that we have right now takes you 750 days to get, and that is C's. He is an Ogren Tives nuker. Now, being 750 days in, are you going to specifically need him as a nuke? If you pull him, he's okay. But if you get him in 750 days, A1, increase attack buff on this champion if this attack is critical, cool. A2, attack an enemy 3 times, fills the champion's turn meter by 10% on each crit, also places perfect veil on this champion. A3, attacks all enemies, increase crit damage on this champion for 2 turns before attack. Heals this champion on each critical hit. That's pretty cool, 3-turn cooldown. Passive, steals 15% of the turn meter from the enemy with the highest turn meter at the end of this champion's turn. Effect cannot be resisted. He's honestly decent, but fortunately, 2 years in, are you really going to get level him for DPS? No, fortunately not. Realistically, you're not going to have a use for him. So what have we learned today? Well, we've learned that the longer it takes to get a champion, the less use you're going to have from them. I could play the game free to play for a year, and I will probably have multiple DPS better than anything that you could get past a year, except for a couple of units like Eryx, for example, who is actually good. Realistically, I think a lot of these champions should be better if they take so long to get. Now, you can pull them earlier, but the fact that they are free after a certain period of time really just makes it worse in my mind to pull these champions early. Outliers, obviously, Scylla the Drake's goated when you get her, Haikatoon carry when you get her, Vizix surprisingly good, Eryx really quite decent, the rest of A tier quite good as well. B tier are usable, and then C tier and D tier are really, they're bad, they're terrible, or you get them way too late to even use them. That is the ranking. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Destin signing it.